They showed up at dawn. No warning. No permits. Just bulldozers. Digging a canal straight through the middle of my farm. They said it was for the community, but they didn't ask the landowner. They split my fields, cut off my tractor trail, and dumped their runoff into my crops. So I didn't get mad. I got even. I built a road straight over their canal and then dragged them into court for every inch of it. This is the story of how I took down a power-hungry HOA with gravel grit and the law on my side. The first time I noticed the orange flags, I thought it was kids pulling a prank. Bright orange survey markers fluttered in the breeze, planted in a straight, suspiciously perfect line across the south end of my pasture. They cut right through the gentle slope I used for gravity-fed irrigation down to the creek. I stood on the porch with my coffee going cold, squinting at them like maybe the morning light was playing tricks on my eyes. It wasn't. That was my land, my farm. 14 years of sweat and savings and stubborn hope marked up like a contractor's doodle pad, and nobody had asked me a single damn thing. I live alone out here, alone by choice. 22 years in the Army, 2 combat tours, 1 divorce, 1 back that still howls. When the cold fronts roll off the Blue Ridge, taught me the value of quiet. I bought this 110-acre parcel in western North Carolina to raise soybeans, keep bees, and let the mountains do the talking. Good loam, clean water, and a view you can't buy in any subdivision. I didn't come here for neighbors. I sure as hell didn't come here for a homeowners association. But a few years ago, the old dairy farm to my west got carved up by developers. Overnight cul-de-sacs with names like Willow Creek and Fox Hollow appeared every house wearing the same fake shutters and the same plastic mailbox. And with them came the Sunrise Meadows HOA. They'd kept to themselves until now. I called their office that same morning. The phone rang 12 times before a chipper, distracted woman named Dana finally picked up. Yes, there is some infrastructure work planned, she said, but it's all approved through municipal cooperation. I didn't approve anything, I told her. Oh, well. You're not actually inside the subdivision, she answered, as if that solved the problem. We're just improving regional water flow. It benefits everyone. I hung up before I said something that would have made my drill sergeant blush. The next day, the flags multiplied into a grid. One of them was wired so deep I couldn't pull it out with my bare hands. That afternoon, a white SUV wearing the Sunrise Meadows logo parked just inside my fence line. 2 men in pressed polos and clipboards got out and started pointing at my barn like they were already calculating square footage. I walked down the hill fast enough to raise dust. Who gave you permission to set foot on my land? I asked. The taller one, smug as Sunday, raised an eyebrow. This section is part of the Sunrise Drainage Initiative. Floodplain maps changed. Floodplain maps don't grant easements, I said. This is private property. My name's on the deed. The shorter one chuckled. You might want to check recent county records, sir. Things move fast around here. They left tire tracks across my gravel driveway and never looked back. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the original 1943 deed, a laminated zoning map, and a yellow highlighter. My grandfather's voice was still in my head. Keep it in writing, Miles, especially with neighbors. I traced my boundary lines in thick yellow. Those orange flags marched straight across them like an invading army. First thing next morning, I called the county zoning office. A nervous kid named Kevin ran every database he had. There's nothing officially filed that puts a canal on your parcel, he said, sounding as confused as I felt. There's a permit application under Sunrise Meadows HOA for Irrigation Channel 4B, but the map they submitted stops at your fence. Send me the timestamp, I said. 3 days old. They were already marking my land before they even had permission to dig next door. A cold, focused burn started behind my sternum, the kind you learn to recognize in a forward operating base when the plan changes and nobody bothered to tell you. 3 mornings later, I woke to the sound of diesel engines. I threw on yesterday's jeans, still barefoot, and stepped onto the porch. 4 yellow machines, yellow as hazard signs, sat at the edge of my pasture. 1 excavator, 1 backhoe, 2 dump trucks. Men in orange vests and hard hats were eating sausage biscuits and pointing at the flags like this was the first day of deer season. I ran down the hill shouting before my brain caught up with my feet. Shut it down. This is private property. The backhoe operator climbed down, holding a crumpled work order. Got orders from the HOA, he shrugged. Pre-cleared section. Pre-cleared by who? He looked at the paper like it might answer for him. Client says it's good. 15 minutes later, the first scoop of my topsoil soil I'd spent years amending with composted manure and cover crops got dumped into a truck like kitchen trash. I stood there yelling until my voice shredded. One of the crew slipped on headphones and turned his back. By noon, a raw 4-foot scar ran clean across my pasture, aimed straight at the gate I used for cattle. That night, I didn't sleep either. I walked the fresh trench wearing a headlamp, measuring every foot, with a surveyor's wheel writing numbers in a spiral notebook while the frogs screamed around me. Because if they were going to draw a line through my life, I was going to make damn sure the record showed exactly where they'd put it and exactly how far they'd gone. I don't know what hour it was when the ground started shaking the next morning, only that it yanked me out of a dead sleep like incoming mortar rounds. That low mechanical growl you never forget once you've slept beside it for months at a time. I was out of bed and at the bedroom window before my eyes were fully open. They were back and they'd brought friends. 3 bulldozers this time, blades already lowered, chewing deeper into the trench they'd started yesterday. A flatbed truck idled along my fence line, unloading 8-foot sections of concrete culvert like this was a Corps of Engineers job on a federal highway. At least 8 men in reflective vests moved across my land as if my no trespassing signs were lawn ornaments. I didn't bother with coffee. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and marched outside in pajama pants and barn boots. My voice cracked in the cold. Who the hell told you could come back? Most of them didn't even turn. One kid, maybe 25, trimmed beard clipboard, hugged to his chest like a shield, finally walked over. Sir, we're on a scheduled continuation for the community canal system. You were notified. I was notified of nothing, I said. This is private property. My name is on the deed. You are trespassing. Again. He gave me the kind of smirk you want to wipe off with a 2x4. We were told the strip is under utility easement pending final review. Pending review is not possession, I snapped. That ditch is running through my soybean stubble. That's when I saw how much worse it had gotten overnight. The 4-foot scar was now a 7-foot wide, 6-foot deep, concrete-lined channel sloped and reinforced so no tractor, no plow, no irrigation rig on God's green earth could cross it without a bridge. It cut diagonally across the only packed gravel trail I had, the one my late father-in-law and I built by hand 15 years ago, strong enough for loaded hay wagons even when the creek ran high. Now it was severed like a snapped spine. Everything on the far side, livestock paddock, orchard rows, equipment shed, was suddenly an island. The canal wasn't drainage. It was a moat built to isolate me from my own land. I demanded the site supervisor. They gave me a name, Brad Whitmore, and a cell number that rang straight to voicemail. I left a message calm enough to chill beer. Mr. Whitmore, Miles Garrison, owner of Parcel 17A, the farm you're currently destroying. You've got until 10 a.m. to call me back. After that, I'm calling the sheriff, the county assessor, the state DEQ, and every reporter between here and Asheville. Clock's ticking. I hung up and immediately dialed the sheriff's non-emergency line. The dispatcher actually sounded shocked. A canal on private farmland without an easement or condemnation order. That's not how this is supposed to work. She promised a unit within the hour. While I waited, I kept recording every scoop of dirt, every cloud of diesel smoke, every crew member lighting a cigarette beside my beehives, like the bees were part of the audience. At 9:12 a.m., Deputy Carson arrived. Tall, slow-talking, 2 years from retirement, and zero patience for nonsense. I handed him a laminated copy of my deed and a fresh cup of coffee I'd brewed while waiting. He scanned the scene, shook his head, and walked over to Clipboard Kid. They talked for 5 minutes. I watched the kid gesture wildly toward the subdivision like geography itself was on his side. Carson came back with a jaw muscle jumping. He claims they have temporary construction access under a zoning overlay. Is that a real thing, I asked? Not without a recorded filing and notice to the landowner, he said. I'm writing an incident report and kicking it upstairs to the county attorney, but I can't shut them down myself unless there's imminent danger. Civil matter. Civil. Translation, more paperwork, more time, more money, while my farm got carved up in real time. Carson gave me an apologetic nod and drove off. The dozers never even slowed. I stood at the edge of the trench and looked down. The soil there was the best on the place. Black, loamy, sweet-smelling, the kind my dad called black gold. Years of rotating crops, spreading manure, nursing it through drought and deluge. Now it lay in heaps in the back of dump trucks, headed God knows where. I followed the trench with my eyes to where it curved into the tree line and realized with a slow, icy clarity exactly where it was going down the slope behind the subdivision and straight into the same creek that fed my lower fields and their pretty retention ponds. They weren't mitigating flooding. They were stealing my runoff capacity, so their cul-de-sacs stayed dry. That night, I didn't eat. I drove into town after the county offices closed and sweet-talked an old clerk into staying late. We pulled every overlay, every permit, every scribble filed by Sunrise Meadows in the last 3 years. Result: 0 easements, 0 condemnation orders, 0 recorded notices. The only thing on file was a 5-day-old concept plan that stopped politely at my fence line. They weren't even pretending anymore. I printed 4 complete sets, stamped and dated. 1 for me, 1 for a lawyer I hadn't hired yet, 1 for the zoning board, and 1 addressed to Mr. Brad Whitmore, HOA president, with a post-it that read, "See you soon." I drove home gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles sang. I wasn't going to stop this. I was going to make them wish they'd never laid eyes on my dirt. The next morning, a blue envelope was wedged into my gate latch like someone had walked up in the dark and tucked it there on purpose. No postage, no return address, except the gold-embossed Sunrise Meadows logo. My name was typed in perfect block letters across the front. I carried it inside, slid it open with the same pocket knife I'd carried in Kandahar, and pulled out a single sheet of thick cream paper that felt expensive enough for a wedding invitation. At the top, in bold serif font, Community Infrastructure Notice Phase 1 Canal Project. The letter was a masterpiece of polite arrogance. Words like regional hydrological concerns, proactive community-oriented solutions, and long-term environmental stability within Sunrise Meadows and the adjacent residential corridor. Adjacent. That's what I was now, an appendix to their golf cart empire. At the bottom, underlined twice, "Your cooperation is appreciated in the public interest." I read it 3 times, feeling the burn move from my gut to my jaw. 30 minutes later, I was parked in front of their HOA office, a fake cottage with stone veneer window boxes full of plastic geraniums and a brass plaque that read, "Sunrise Meadows Homeowners Association Building Community." I walked straight past the reception desk. Dana, the chipper phone voice, looked up mid-sentence, and her smile died. "I need Brad Whitmore," I said. "He's not available right now." "Then get me whoever thinks they own the right to dig through my farm." The door behind her opened, and there he was. Tall tan teeth, too white for November. Navy blazer, no tie, sunglasses perched in his hair, like he'd just stepped off a yacht. Brad Whitmore, HOA president, former real estate flipper, current self-appointed king of everything west of my fence line. "Mr. Garrison," he said, extending a hand. I ignored. What a surprise. "You know damn well why I'm here." I dropped the blue envelope on the counter between us. "This says I'm supposed to smile while you steal my land." He picked it up like it was a takeout menu. "It's hardly stealing, Miles. The canal is part of a comprehensive water management plan. We're working with the city for long-term sustainability. You're working with nobody. I checked every filing in the county. There's nothing recorded. Not one easement, not one permit that touches my parcel." A flicker of irritation crossed his face, gone as fast as it came. "I'm sure it's just a paperwork delay. Our legal team assures me we're within our rights to manage overflow." "Your overflow is now my problem," I said. "You're dumping lawn chemicals and playground runoff straight into my creek." He spread his hands, the picture of reasonableness. "It's in everyone's best interest. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good." I'd think a veteran would understand civic duty. The word veteran hit like a slap. He was weaponizing my service, trying to shame me into silence. I leaned in until I could smell his cologne. "Don't ever talk to me about duty. Duty is showing up when nobody's watching. Duty is not sending bulldozers onto a man's land at dawn because your McMansions can't handle a hard rain." Dana shrank behind the desk. Brad's smile thinned. "We're prepared to offer compensation," he said. "Not cash, of course, but full access to our landscaping crew. Free mowing, weed control, maybe even an honorary seat on the Architectural Review Committee." I laughed once, sharp and ugly. "You cut my farm in half and you offer me free lawn service." "The project is nearly complete," he said, lowering his voice like we were negotiating. "Reversing it now would be costly." For everyone. Something cold and ancient settled in my chest. "You'll find out what costly means," I said. "Count on it." I walked out before he could answer. That night, I opened the old footlocker I keep under the stairs. Discharge papers, folded flag, a pair of binoculars still scarred from Helmand, and at the bottom, my dog-eared copy of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Land Use Manual. The one I swore I'd never need in civilian life. I read until the words blurred "artificial waterways on private property without permit or compensation equals unlawful conversion of land possible federal jurisdiction." Then I texted an old squad mate, Russ Merrick, now a regulator with the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. Sent him 3 photos of the clearest drone shots I had and one line: "Tell me if this canal is a federal violation." 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Russ." Jesus Christ, Miles. That's an unpermitted lateral ditch in a farmed watershed. That's a textbook Clean Water Act violation. Want me to open a file? I typed back a single word. Yes. While Brad Whitmore slept under his vaulted ceiling, I started building the case that would bury him. And I wasn't stopping at the canal. I was coming for every inch they thought they owned. By the end of that week, the canal had become a full-blown moat. They'd poured concrete sidewalls, installed corrugated culvert pipes at both ends, and rolled out those cheap rolls of hydro seed mat that look green from a distance but smell like wet paper and fertilizer. The finished channel now stretched the entire eastern boundary of my farm, 6 feet deep, 8 feet wide at the top, carrying a steady gray-brown current that stank of chlorine and fresh-cut St. Augustine grass. Saturday morning, I fired up the old Massey Ferguson bush hog, hanging off the back, ready to mow the orchard on the far side. I rumbled down the trail I'd used since the day I bought the place, and slammed on the brakes so hard the tractor lurched. There was no way across. No ramp, no bridge, no nothing. Just a sheer concrete drop and filthy water moving fast enough to carry away anything smaller than a pickup truck. A red plastic child's tricycle wheel floated past, followed by a soggy Amazon box and what looked like half a bag of Scott's Turf Builder. I killed the engine, climbed down, and stared. The canal had swallowed 3 feet of my land on the south end and 6 inches on the north. My fence posts now tilted drunkenly over open water. I couldn't legally rebuild the fence without an engineered structure and a permit I didn't need and couldn't afford. My farm was officially 2 islands, and I didn't own a boat. I spent the rest of the day hiking the long way around, nearly a mile over the rocky western ridge, carrying a 5-gallon fuel can and a chainsaw on my back like a pack mule. Took me 2.5 hours to do a 20-minute mowing job. On the way back, I slipped on slick clay, tore my jeans, and twisted my ankle so hard I heard something pop. By the time I limped home, the sun was gone, and so was my patience. I sat at the kitchen table with an ice pack on my ankle and my old farm notebook open in front of me. I sketched the canal exactly as it lay now, every bend, every culvert, every inch of encroachment. Then I drew my farm the way it had been for 14 years. Equipment paths, livestock trails, irrigation runs. Then I circled one spot in red ink, a 20-yard wide choke point where the canal crossed my original gravel access trail, the spot they'd torn up and left raw. That was the bottleneck, and it was also opportunity. Sunday morning, I drove to the rental yard in town and paid cash for a 2-day lease on a Bobcat T770 with a backhoe arm and a 6-way blade. The kid behind the counter didn't ask questions. He just took my money and handed me the keys. I spent the rest of the day clearing brush and leveling that choke point. I drove stakes, ran mason's string until the line was laser straight, and worked until the stars came out and my ankle screamed louder than the diesel engine. Monday, I was back at dawn with a borrowed dump trailer and a promise from an old quarry buddy 3 counties over. 5 loads of crusher-run gravel, each one dumped, spread, and packed until the ground felt like concrete under the tires. I laid scrap irrigation pipe for drainage, buttressed the edges with railroad ties I'd been saving since the Clinton administration, and kept measuring, kept checking grade, kept building. They wanted a canal. I was going to give them a road right across the top of it. Tuesday afternoon, while I was running the plate compactor and sweating through my shirt, the familiar white HOA SUV appeared again. Brad Whitmore stepped out first, sunglasses reflecting the sky, followed by a younger guy in a polo 2 sizes too tight. Brad shaded his eyes and surveyed the rising gravel causeway like a general inspecting enemy fortifications. Planning a driveway to nowhere, he called. I shut off the compactor and let the silence settle. Restoring legal access to the part of my farm you illegally isolated, I said. He smiled the way a shark smiles. You're obstructing a permitted community water feature. That could be considered vandalism. Permitted by who, I asked. Because the county has no record of it. His jaw tightened. There are rules, Mr. Garrison. And there are laws, I replied. I've read every single one that applies to this piece of ground. He folded his arms. Our legal team will be in touch. Tell them to bring lunch, I said. It's going to be a long day. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper still warm from the printer. I held it up so he could see the county seal. Provisional Agricultural Easement Section 105.117, filed this morning. Allows me temporary crossing during utility obstruction. Signed, stamped, and recorded at 9:03 a.m. Brad stared at the paper like it had personally insulted his mother. You're bluffing. I smiled for the first time in weeks. I'm a farmer, Brad. I don't have time for bluffing. The SUV spun gravel all the way back to the subdivision. I went back to work. By Wednesday evening, the road was finished. Not pretty gravel, still raw and sharp-edged, but solid enough to carry a combine if I ever bought one. Wide enough for my widest equipment crowned for drainage, and strong enough that I could feel it in my bones when I drove the skid steer across it the first time. Something shifted inside me that wasn't just relief. It was ownership pure and fierce, the kind you feel when you put your hands back on something they tried to take. They could dig all the canals they wanted. I had just built a road straight through theirs, and I wasn't done yet. The morning after I finished the road, I limped into the county clerk's office with a banker's box so heavy the bottom was starting to give. Inside were 6 months of evidence, drone photos printed on glossy paper, soil sample reports sealed by the state lab, time-stamped videos on a thumb drive, survey notes, receipts for every load of gravel I'd hauled, and a thick stack of highlighted statutes. Sandra at the front desk looked up from her crossword and grinned. Oh Lord, it's the farmer again. Morning, Sandra. Word travels fast. Cousin of mine works for the surveyor. Says you've got more documentation than the HOA has excuses. She pointed me down the hall to the Land Records Division. Don, the wiry clerk with the sharp eyes, took one look at the box and whistled low. Sunrise Meadows, right. Straight through my pasture, I said. Split my farm like a Thanksgiving turkey. He flipped through the folder page after page, nodding slower with every sheet. They really thought they could just dig and dare you to sue, seems that way. Don leaned back. You don't need me? You need Harriet Wells. Former city attorney hates HOAs the way cats hate water. Not cheap, but she'll eat their lunch. He scribbled a number on a sticky note and slid it across. I called her from the parking lot. Harriet picked up on the second ring voice like she'd been waiting for the fight. Wells, Miles Garrison. HOA dug an unpermitted canal through my farm. I've got a box of proof and a gravel road across it. She laughed once, short and delighted. Send me everything. I'll call you back in 2 hours. She called back in 43 minutes. You've got trespass property, destruction, unjust enrichment, and a slam dunk environmental claim. We can stop them cold with an injunction and make them pay to put your land back the way they found it. How fast emergency hearing in 12 days if the judge likes what I show her tomorrow morning? I exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. Do it. That afternoon, I drove to City Hall. The receptionist tried the "Do you have an appointment" routine until I said the words Sunrise Meadows, Canal. Suddenly the mayor would see me. Calvin Lockett poured 2 cups of burnt coffee and got straight to the point. Brad Whitmore's been in here twice this week claiming you're the problem. He's about to learn different. I slid the drone photos across his desk. He studied them, jaw working. This should never have left the planning department. Somebody greased palms. Can you stop it? Not forever. But I can freeze every new permit Sunrise Meadows submits until the courts sort it out. That buys you breathing room. He stamped a memo right there, initialed it in red, and handed me a copy. Consider their pipeline clogged. I left City Hall feeling something I hadn't felt since the day I signed the farm papers back up. The very next morning, they tried to hit back. A brand new sign appeared overnight, staked 10 feet from my road. Warning, unpermitted structure obstructing community drainage channel, cease all activity, or face civil and environmental penalties. Sunrise Meadows HOA Compliance Office. It wasn't even laminated, just cheap inkjet paper in a plastic sleeve flapping like surrender already. I laughed out loud, yanked it out of the ground, and ran the front tire of the tractor over it for good measure. If they wanted war, I just upgraded from a rifle to artillery. That same day, I texted Russ Merrick again. Need your best engineering numbers. Want this road so bulletproof a tank could use it. He sent me a PDF an hour later titled, How to Embarrass an HOA with Gravel and Math. Over the next week, I turned my emergency crossing into a fortress. Double-walled HDPE pipe for drainage, steel mesh grids for traction, 8-inch crusher run compacted in 4 lifts, concrete curb blocks, poured by a buddy who owed me a favor from Kandahar. When I was done, the road looked like it had been there 50 years and could last another 100. HOA residents started showing up to watch. Some stood at the canal edge, holding Starbucks cups whispering. A few gave me a quiet thumbs up. One kid on a bicycle shouted, "That's awesome, mister." Then the drone came. Black, expensive HOA logo on the underside. It hovered 30 feet above my head for 20 minutes, filming every inch. I waved. Let them have the footage. I wanted them to see what real construction looked like. Friday evening, Harriet emailed. Subject, they blinked. They just filed for a temporary injunction to tear your road down. Claims it's an environmental hazard. Attached 38 pages of panic and drone photos. I grinned so hard my face hurt. Our response was 47 pages, triple stapled with Russ's affidavit compaction tests, load calculations, and a cover letter that basically read, "Come and try." Court date Tuesday 9 a.m. I ironed my only good shirt, polished my boots, and put on the old army jacket I swore I'd never wear in public again. Harriet met me on the courthouse steps. Nervous? Nope, I said, just ready. Inside, Brad Whitmore sat ramrod straight in a $5,000 suit, looking like a man who'd never lost at anything in his life. He was about to. Courtroom B smelled like lemon polish and old fear. I sat beside Harriet, my army jacket, the only thing in the room that had ever seen real dirt. Across the aisle, Brad Whitmore looked like a magazine ad, charcoal suit pocket square, sharp enough to cut glass face, arranged in practiced concern. Karen Delaney sat 2 rows behind him, clutching a designer purse like it was a life raft. The gallery was packed, reporters in the back, farmers in clean Carhartt, a handful of HOA residents who looked like they'd snuck out without telling their spouses. Judge Denise Parrish entered at exactly 9:00 a.m. She was small, gray-haired, and had the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees when she sat down. I'd heard stories about her. Property rights farmers called her Saint Denise. Developers called her other names. The HOA's attorney, some Raleigh import with hair product worth more than my tractor, stood first. Your Honor, the Sunrise, Meadows Homeowners Association seeks an emergency injunction to remove an unpermitted structure that obstructs a critical flood control channel and endangers the community downstream. He clicked a remote. A drone photo of my road filled the screen, complete with red arrows and ominous captions: potential collapse zone erosion hazard, unauthorized fill in waters of the state. He went on for 12 minutes about good faith infrastructure, historic drainage patterns, and how I was recklessly provocative. He even managed to say the word veteran, like it was a personality disorder. Then he sat down. Harriet didn't stand right away. She let the silence stretch until the air conditioner sounded loud. Then she rose slowly, clicked her own remote, and my survey plat replaced their pretty arrows. Your Honor, let's start with the truth. She walked the judge through it like a battlefield brief. The black line, my deeded boundary. The red line, the canal, 32 feet inside my property, on the south end, 6 inches on the north. The yellow highlight, every permit application the HOA had filed, every single one stamped, rejected or never submitted. She clicked again. My drone footage rolled silent and merciless, backhoes crossing my fence at 6:47 a.m., concrete trucks dumping on my soil, orange-vested men walking my rows like they owned them. GPS coordinates burned white in the corner. Then the soil tests. Photos of gray, chemical-laced water pouring from their culvert into my creek. Lab reports showing fertilizer, pesticides, chlorine levels 3 times the legal limit for agricultural waterways. Harriet turned to the judge. The plaintiffs didn't build a drainage channel. They built an unpermitted sewer for their subdivision and pointed it at my client's farm. When he restored legal access to the land they stole from him, they ran crying to this court. She clicked one last time. Russ Merrick's affidavit appeared state DEQ engineer, 22 years experience, declaring my road exceeds NCDOT secondary road standards and poses zero environmental threat. Harriet sat. Judge Parrish looked over her glasses at the HOA table. Counsel, do you possess a recorded easement, a condemnation order, or a single piece of paper signed by Mr. Garrison granting permission for this canal? The Raleigh lawyer opened his mouth, closed it, shuffled papers. We have pending applications. That is not what I asked. No, Your Honor. She turned to me for the first time that morning. Mr. Garrison, you built this road after they cut your farm in half. Yes, ma'am. Did you attempt to resolve this with the HOA first? I attempted to resolve it by yelling at bulldozers, ma'am. They ignored me. A couple of farmers in the back snorted. Judge Parrish leaned forward. Let me be perfectly clear. There is no good faith exception to trespass. There is no public interest clause that lets you dig on a man's land because your basements get damp. This canal is illegal. The road Mr. Garrison built to reach his own livestock and equipment is not. She looked straight at Brad Whitmore. If I hear of one more unauthorized scoop of dirt on parcel 17A, I will hold this association in contempt and fine it $1,000 a day until that canal is filled in and the topsoil is replaced. Am I understood? Brad's face went the color of wet ash. He managed a strangled, "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Parrish banged the gavel so hard the water glasses jumped. Temporary injunction denied. Mr. Garrison's road stands. Court costs to the plaintiffs. We're adjourned. The gallery erupted. Somebody actually whooped. Harriet turned to me with the smallest, fiercest smile I'd ever seen. Let's go pave the damn thing. I shook her hand, then turned to leave. Brad was already halfway to the door, shoulders stiff, not looking back. Karen Delaney stood frozen mouth open like a fish on dry land. Outside on the courthouse steps, a reporter shoved a microphone in my face. Mr. Garrison, how does it feel to beat the HOA? I looked past him at the mountains rising blue in the distance. Feels like coming home, I said. That afternoon, I bought 2 yards of concrete and a hardware store that suddenly wanted to give me the local hero discount, and I poured permanent wheel tracks across the crown of my road so nothing short of a bomb would ever wash it out again. They could dig canals. I had just proven I could build something stronger. And the fight wasn't over. It was just moving to the next phase. 3 days after the courthouse victory, I was back on the road this time running the final roller over fresh concrete wheel tracks when the pink blazer appeared like a bad omen. She was standing dead center on my gravel arms, crossed heels, planted like she owned the mineral rights to the dirt under my boots. Karen Delaney, Vice President of Sunrise Meadows, HOA. Wife of a retired Superior Court judge. Professional outrage generator. I killed the engine on the loader. Dust settled around us in the sudden quiet. You're trespassing, I said, voice flat. No, she answered, pulling off her oversized sunglasses with all the drama of a soap opera reveal. You're trespassing. I actually laughed. One sharp bark that echoed off the canal walls. She took 3 clicking steps forward. This entire structure is unauthorized. The injunction may have been denied, but our environmental review is ongoing. Until that's complete, this pile of rocks violates Section 12.8 of the Sunrise Meadows Stormwater Protection Covenants. Your covenants don't apply 40 feet outside your curb line, Karen. She ignored me. You're disrupting an engineered drainage system. We have children, elderly residents. Lives are at stake. I climbed down from the cab, slowly, boots crunching. My ankle still throbbed from the twist weeks ago, but the pain felt good now, like a reminder. Let me get this straight, I said, stepping close enough to smell her perfume over the diesel. Your association sent bulldozers across my fence, at dawn poured concrete on my soil, dumped fertilizer soup into my creek, split my farm in half, then sued me when I fixed the mess you made. And now you're standing on my road telling me I'm the danger. Her nostrils flared. That water was designed to flow in a controlled manner. Controlled right through my soybeans. She jabbed a manicured finger toward the canal. You move that machine 1 inch and I'm calling the sheriff. I pulled out my phone, already dialing. Perfect. Let's call him together. Deputy Carson picked up on the second ring. Hey, Miles. Tell me this isn't round 3. Afraid it is. I'm on my private road legal per Judge Parrish. Got a lady named Karen Delaney physically blocking the loader and threatening to have me arrested. Long pause. Then a sigh that carried 35 years of coffee and paperwork. Put me on speaker. I did. Mrs. Delaney Carson's voice rumbled through the phone like gravel. You are currently standing on parcel 17A, Court has ruled that road legal. You have no jurisdiction exactly 0 feet past your property line. Leave peacefully in the next 30 seconds, or I send a unit to escort you." Karen's face went from red to white in one heartbeat. "You can't." 25 seconds, ma'am." She spun on her heels, stabbing the gravel like ice picks, and stormed back across the canal. Halfway to the subdivision, she turned and shrieked, "This isn't over. You've made an enemy today." I smiled, waved with 2 fingers. "No, ma'am, I made a road." Carson chuckled in my ear. "You owe me a beer, Garrison. Whole county owes you 1 deputy." That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of Maker's Mark and watched the solar path lights I'd sunk along the road glow soft amber in the dark. The canal still gurgled below like a bad memory, but the road sat above it, solid, straight mine. I thought the war was cooling off. I was wrong. 2 mornings later, a silver SUV with county plates pulled up at dawn. Out stepped a tall woman in a hard hat and steel-toe boots, clipboard in hand, state seal on her vest. Kelsey Hargrove, Compliance Officer, North Carolina Department of Water Resources. She walked the canal bank with me, took water samples, measured encroachment with a laser, photographed every cracked concrete lip. "Judge Daniels lit a fire under the governor's office," she said. "They want this fixed yesterday." She pointed at the hydro seed mats already peeling. "This whole section is coming out. Court order says 30 days or 1,000 a day. Clock started yesterday." I nodded toward the subdivision. "They'll drag their feet." "They can try," she said, snapping another photo. "I've got a backhoe on standby, and the authority to seize equipment if they miss the deadline." She handed me her card. "You need anything, you call me direct." I tucked it in my shirt pocket like a winning lottery ticket. That same afternoon, a manila envelope was hand-delivered by a kid who looked barely old enough to shave. Inside, a cease and desist from the HOA's Raleigh law firm, demanding I immediately dismantle the unauthorized crossing or face escalating remedies. I read it once, laughed once, and called Harriet. "They're panicking," she said, practically purring. "Perfect. Time to shove." 2 days later, our counter cease and desist went out thick as a phone book, served by certified mail email and 2 sheriff's deputies, who personally handed copies to Brad and Karen at their respective front doors. Karen tried to slam hers. The deputy stuck his boot in the jam and said, "Ma'am, this is official service. Sign or I stay all day." She signed, with a pen that probably cost more than my chainsaw. We also sent a copy to Lizette at the Asheville paper. The story ran front page the next morning. "Farmer fights HOA over illegal canal wins. First round in court. Photo me in muddy boots. Arms folded, loader behind me like a faithful dog." The comments online exploded. Someone started a subreddit. A local radio host called me the Gravel Avenger. People I hadn't seen in years started nodding at me in the co-op. A retired Marine in overalls bought my coffee and said, "Semper Fi, brother. Keep swinging." But the sweetest moment came the following week. 2 HOA board members, not Brad or Karen, showed up at the end of my road in a golf cart that looked embarrassed to be there. The man cleared his throat. We were hoping to talk, off the record, about ending this quietly. Some of us think the canal was mishandled. I let the silence stretch until the crickets got loud. "You want me to be quiet?" I asked. "Just lower the temperature. There's a vote coming up to remove Brad and Karen. If the headlines keep coming." "Good," I said. "Let the whole neighborhood finally feel uncomfortable." Maybe that's how they learn. They left looking smaller than when they arrived. That night, Harriet called. They just filed a motion to dismiss our cease and desist. They're bleeding money and terrified. I looked out at the road glowing under the moon. "Tell them we're not dismissing anything," I said. "Tell them we're upgrading to a full civil suit. Restoration order, damages the works." Harriet laughed like Christmas came early. "Thought you'd never ask." I hung up, poured 2 fingers of whiskey, and toasted the dark. They thought concrete and lawyers could bury me. I had just turned their canal into a grave, and I was bringing the dirt to fill it in. The final hearing was scheduled for a cold Tuesday in early December. Courtroom A, this time, bigger, colder, packed wall to wall. Word had spread across 3 counties, farmers in feed store caps, reporters with notepads, even a television crew from Charlotte. Someone had made stickers that read, "Respect the line," and they were stuck on jackets, coffee cups, and one guy's hard hat. I wore the same clean jeans and army jacket. Harriet wore Navy-like armor. Across the aisle, the HOA had tripled their legal team, 3 Raleigh lawyers in matching suits, Brad Whitmore in the middle. Looking like he hadn't slept in days, Karen Delaney 2 seats down, clutching a leather folio so hard her knuckles were white. The judge was the Honorable Lorna Daniels, property rights legend, known for quoting the North Carolina Constitution the way preachers quote scripture. She took the bench at 900 sharp, and the room went church quiet. Harriet stood first. Your Honor, this is not a complicated case. It is a simple one. The defendants trespassed, excavated diverted water, poisoned soil, and destroyed agricultural infrastructure without a single legal document authorizing them to set foot on Mr. Garrison's land. When he restored access to his own farm, they sued him. We are asking for full restoration and compensatory damages. She clicked the projector. For the next 43 minutes, the courtroom watched my farm die in high definition. Drone flyovers showing the scar widening day by day. Time-lapse of bulldozers crossing my fence line at dawn. Water samples turning from creek clear to lawn chemical gray. Soil tests glowing red with nitrogen, phosphorus, and banned herbicides. Photos of my orchard, isolated livestock trails, severed irrigation pipes, cracked and useless. Then the money slides. $31,400 in lost soybean yield. $18,200 in emergency gravel and concrete. $22,000 in legal fees to date. $14,000 for soil remediation that hadn't even started yet. Harriet closed with Russ Merrick on the stand under oath, stating that the canal constituted an unpermitted waters of the state violation, and that my road was the most over-engineered agricultural crossing I've ever inspected. She sat down. The HOA's lead counsel cleared his throat 3 times and tried the last card they had left: good faith and community benefit. He talked about rising insurance premiums, flooded basements, children's safety. He even showed a photo of a soggy swing set. Judge Daniels let him finish, then looked over her glasses. Counselor, does your client have an easement? A pause long enough to grow corn in. No, Your Honor. A condemnation order? No. Written permission of any kind from Mr. Garrison? No. She turned the page in front of her. Then I failed to see the good faith. She looked at me. Mr. Garrison, anything you wish to say? I stood. The room leaned in. I bought this farm to heal, Your Honor. I spent 14 years putting life back into that dirt after the Army took more than I thought I had left to give. They came at dawn with machines and took pieces of it while I watched. I'm not asking for revenge. I'm asking for my land back the way God and the deed left it to me. I sat down. Judge Daniels didn't even look at her notes again. In Garrison versus Sunrise Meadows Homeowners Association, this court finds willful, deliberate trespass, unlawful taking, and environmental damage. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $86,000. Actual damages plus court costs and attorney fees. The canal section lying within Parcel 17A is to be removed in its entirety under county supervision within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in daily fines of $1,000 and possible criminal referral. She looked straight at Brad Whitmore. Mr. Whitmore, you are personally ordered to appear at the site daily until the work is complete. If I hear you sent a proxy, I will hold you in contempt. The gavel fell like a gunshot. The courtroom exploded. Farmers stood and clapped. A reporter in the back row actually yelled, "Hell yes!" Brad stared straight ahead, face gray. Karen dropped her folio. Papers scattered across the floor like white flags. Harriet turned to me, eyes shining. "Merry Christmas, Miles." Outside on the courthouse steps, cameras flashed. Someone handed me a thermos of coffee. A woman I didn't know hugged me and said her daddy's farm had been next on the HOA's list. I answered questions until my voice gave out, then drove home with the windows down and the heat blasting, letting the cold mountain air scour the courthouse smell off me. 2 weeks later, the machines came back, but this time they were tearing out concrete instead of pouring it. Kelsey Hargrove, the state compliance officer, stood on my road with her clipboard while backhoes ripped up culvert pipes and dump trucks hauled away the HOA's pride one load at a time. Brad Whitmore showed up every morning in a different expensive coat, stood at the fence line like a man attending his own funeral, and left every evening without a word. I brought Kelsey coffee. She brought donuts. We watched the canal disappear foot by foot. One morning, the young clipboard kid from the very first day walked up, hat in hand. "Sir, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I was just doing what they told me." I looked at him a long minute, then stuck out my hand. Tell you what, you ever need a job where the boss doesn't make you dig on a veteran's land at dawn, you come a see me. He shook it like he meant it. By New Year's Eve, the canal was gone. Just a long raw seam in the earth waiting for spring. I stood on my road at midnight boots on gravel that was now legally permanently mine and watched fireworks bloom over the subdivision roofs a mile away. They were celebrating something. I was just getting started. Spring came early that year. The scar where the canal had been softened under ryegrass and clover I'd seeded thick to hold the soil until the real healing could start. By late March, the ground was green again, but the land still remembered darker stripes where the heavy equipment had compacted it, lighter patches where new topsoil had been trucked in from Asheville. I mixed with my own composted manure until the whole stretch smelled like a farm again instead of a construction site. I widened the road another 4 feet, added a gentle crown, and poured a concrete apron at each end so the mail truck could turn around without tearing up grass. Then I did something nobody expected. I put up a small wooden signs every 50 yards along the shoulders, hand-lettered in black paint on cedar. Private road, agricultural access, trespassers will be prosecuted. Parcel 17A, M. Garrison. They looked plain, almost humble. But every driver coming down the county road could read them from 100 yards away, and every HOA resident staring out their back windows could see them glinting in the sun like quiet middle fingers. People started coming, not Gawker's neighbors. First it was Derek from Fox Hollow Court, the one with the little boy who loved goats. He brought 2 apple saplings and asked if he could plant them along the old fence line to replace the ones the dozers took. We set them together while his son fed treats to my does through the fence. Then Helen, a retired nurse from Willow Creek, showed up with a flat of blackberry starts and a shy smile. "I always hated that canal," she said. "It smelled like a swimming pool." We planted the berries along the north bank where the concrete had been ripped out. Rami the mail carrier brought fence staples and a 6-pack of cheerwine. A high school kid who mowed lawns in the subdivision spent his Saturday afternoons helping me reset posts. Word spread the way it does in the country, quietly, stubbornly, one person at a time. One Saturday in April, a white state van pulled up and a woman in khakis stepped out carrying a clipboard and a big smile. "Laura Torres, GIS office," she said, shaking my hand. "I mapped your case for the county. Mind if I walk the line?" We walked the whole road, her taking notes, me telling the story start to finish. When we got to the far end, she stopped and looked back at the farm laid out whole again. "I've spent 5 years watching HOAs redraw maps and dare people to fight," she said. "You proved they can lose. I want to start something. A rural property defense network. Map surveys, legal templates, everything you used. You willing to teach?" I looked at the road under my boots, solid as bone. "Got a barn and a projector," I said. "Bring coffee." We named it Project Line Walker. First meeting was the first Saturday in May. I expected 10 people. 47 showed up, farmers' widows with inherited land. Young couples who'd bought 5 acres and found themselves surrounded by covenants. I dragged folding chairs out of the hayloft, set up a whiteboard in the barn aisle, and projected my drone footage on the white barn wall like a drive-in movie. We walked them through it step by step. How to pull your own plat map and spot encroachment. How to file a trespass notice that actually scares people. How to document with drone timestamps and soil tests. How to find the one statute the HOA hopes you'll never read. I didn't give speeches. I just told the truth plain while the goats bleated for attention and the coffee pot gurgled on the tack room counter. By the third meeting, we had a shared Google Drive, a private signal group, and a reputation. A farmer in Madison County used my exact court filings to stop an HOA from claiming a 20-foot greenbelt through his pasture. A woman in Haywood County sent me a photo of her new gravel road across a developer's retention pond with the caption, "Respect the line." The subreddit hit 18K members. Somebody printed Gravel Avenger t-shirts. I pretended to hate them, but I wore one under my flannel every day. The HOA tried one last time to save face. They sent a landscaper crew to plant a row of leyland cypresses along the boundary, tight, fast-growing evergreens that would have grown into a green wall within 5 years. I met the crew at the fence line with a copy of the court order in one hand and Kelsey Hargrove's business card in the other. Those trees go on my side of the pins, they come out the same day, I said. The crew looked at their foreman. The foreman looked at the court order. They packed up and left. The cypresses never got planted. Brad Whitmore put his house on the market in June. Karen Delaney's pink blazer stopped appearing at the pool. Rumor was the board voted them out in a closed session that lasted 6 hours and involved a lot of shouting. I didn't go looking for apologies. Never got any either. But one evening in late July, I was fixing fence along the road when a pickup I didn't recognize pulled up. Older man, sunburned neck, Vietnam veteran, ball cap. He got out slow, walked over, and stuck out a calloused hand. Name's Ray Whitaker. Live over in Willow Creek. My backyard used to flood every time we got 2 inches of rain. After your canal came out, hasn't flooded once. Just wanted to say thank you. He reached into the truck bed and pulled out a flat of big boy tomato plants. Figured a man who fights that hard for his dirt ought to have the best tomatoes in the county. I took the plant's throat suddenly tight. Thank you, Ray. He nodded once, climbed back in his truck, and drove off without another word. That night, I planted every one of those tomatoes along the south side of the road where the canal had been. They grew like they were making up for lost time. By August, the road had a life of its own, wildflowers in the shoulders, butterflies drunk on clover tire tracks, from neighbors who now used it as a shortcut to the backfields with my blessing. Kids fished crawdads in the little seep that ran under the culvert. Somebody hung a tire swing from the big oak at the east end. And one morning, in September, I found a small cedar plaque nailed to a fence post near the middle of the road. Hand-carved letters burned deep. This is where they dug. This is where he stood. No signature. I left it there, because that was the truth of it. Not vengeance, not glory. Just a line in the dirt somebody tried to erase, and one man who refused to let them. The road is still there today. Dust in summer mud, in winter deer prints after rain. I drive it every morning when I feed, every evening when I check the bees. And every single time I remember the same thing. You don't have to be loud to be heard. You just have to hold the line. Autumn came early this year. The first cold fronts off the Blue Ridge brought the smell of cured oak leaves and wood smoke drifting across the fields. I stood on the gravel road at dawn, breath fogging in the air, looking out over a soybean field that ran unbroken from the cattle barn all the way to the pine line on the horizon. No scar left. No concrete channel, no chemical stink, no gray water carrying somebody else's lawn, clippings into my creek. Just black dirt, the sweet smell of turned earth, and the steady hum of bees working the new hives I'd moved from the west side to the east, so they wouldn't have to fly the long way around anymore. The road itself has changed too. I put down one last lift of Crusher Run, rolled it smooth, and poured 2 permanent concrete wheel tracks, the exact width of the Massey Ferguson, so the ruts never come back no matter how hard the rains hit. On both shoulders, wildflowers took over like they'd been waiting for permission. Goldenrod purple clover milkweed, thick enough to stop monarch butterflies mid-migration. Kids from the back roads ride their bikes down it now, stopping to hunt crawdads in the little seep that runs under the culvert, or to fly kites in the wide spot where the canal used to be. Project Linewalker has grown beyond anything I imagined. We're past 300 members now. Meetings are once a month in the old hay barn. Some nights we run out of folding chairs and spill into the barnyard under the strings of Edison bulbs I hung last summer. People drive in from 4 counties with plat maps rolled under their arms, soil test envelopes, drone hard drives, and the same fire in their eyes. I felt the morning the bulldozers first showed up. We don't shout, we teach. How to read your deed like a battle plan. How to fly a $200 drone and make it worth $1 million in court. How to file the one form that makes a developer's lawyer sweat at 2 a.m. I still do most of the talking, but I'm not the only voice anymore. There's a widow from Transylvania County who beat an HOA with nothing but a 1952 hand-drawn survey and pure spite. There's a young couple who saved their 40 acres using the exact gravel specs Russ Merrick wrote for me. Every time somebody new wins, they come back and teach the next table of scared landowners how it felt when the judge banged the gavel in their favor. We even have t-shirts now, black simple block letters on the back. Respect the line. I pretend to hate them. I own 7. The HOA never rebuilt the canal. They sold the common area parcel where the pump station was supposed to go and used the money to pay my judgment. Brad Whitmore's house sold in February to a nice couple from Charlotte who just wanted chickens and quiet. Karen Delaney moved to Florida. Rumor says she tells people the whole thing was a misunderstanding. Nobody argues with her anymore. One evening last week, I was tightening fence along the road when an older Ford pickup rolled slow and stopped. Man climbed out wearing a faded Vietnam veteran cap's sunburned neck hands like tree bark. He walked straight up and stuck out his hand. Ray Whitaker. Live over in Willow Creek. My basement stayed bone dry through Hurricane Zeta this year. First time in 22 years. Just wanted to say thank you. He reached into the truck bed and handed me a flat of heirloom tomato sets, the kind with the crinkled leaves. Figured a man who'll fight that hard for his dirt deserves the best tomatoes in the mountains. I took them throat thick, and we planted everyone together right where the canal used to run. They're already knee-high and setting fruit. That night, I walked the road one more time after dark. The solar markers glowed soft amber fireflies, stitched green lines above the clover, and somewhere down the hill an owl called once, then listened. I stopped at the little cedar plaque someone nailed to the fence post years ago. This is where they dug. This is where he stood. I ran my hand over the burned letters worn smooth now by weather and time. The words are still true, but I like to think there's a second line, nobody carved, yet one that only shows up when the light hits just right. This is where the line held. The road is still here. Dust in summer puddles and winter deer tracks after every rain. I drive it twice a day, every day, feeding cattle, checking bees, living the life I damn near lost. And every single time I cross that stretch of gravel and concrete, I built with my own hands and paid for with fury and law. I remember the only thing that matters. You don't have to win loud. You just have to refuse to move. The farm is whole again. The line is respected. And the road, my road goes on as far as these mountains will let it. Miles Garrison, Parcel 17, a Western North Carolina, still standing.